Welcome to the Lazy CEO Podcast, where Jim Schlexer, author of Great CEOs Are Lazy and founder of the CEO Project, features compelling experts and topics for CEOs of mid to large-sized companies. Now, let's get started with the show.
This podcast is brought to you by the CEO Project. At the CEO Project, we work with CEOs to help them grow their business. And our members represent billions of dollars of revenue and profit. And frankly, amongst all of us, we've probably made every mistake in the book, including some you haven't made yet. So if you want to learn from the experience of a bunch of really seasoned CEOs, we're a great place to hang out. In this podcast, what you're going to hear are some of those ideas, concepts, and things that are just going to help you on your journey. If you want to find out more, reach out to us at theceoproject.com, or you can contact me personally at jim@theceoproject.com. Happy listening. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a fun guest today. We've got Jason Boyce from Avenue 7 Media. Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm great, Jim. How are you doing?
Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime. Anything for you, Jim.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I need my car waxed.
We'll be right over after the podcast.
Afterwards, okay. So, Jason and I have known each other for a number of years, back to his original business that he was started in. And I kind of want to start it there because I think it's an opportunity for us to talk about business models and your transition and a couple of other things that are real learning opportunities for all entrepreneurs and CEOs. So let's start with your original business that you were involved in, where you were selling basically sporting equipment of various flavors on Amazon. So talk to us about that business a little bit.
Yeah, sure. No problem. The very first business was called superduperhoops.com. And we were drop shipping with a just-in-time inventory model, basketball hoops from importers and brands and factories in the United States directly to the consumer's home, which was a beautiful business while it lasted. That drop ship business was amazing. No inventory, you list it, you market it, you sell it, you send the order to the manufacturer, and then they worry about getting it to the customer's home.
Now, this was not through Amazon. So you were basically just an order generation, pass the order through, done. Pure marketing.
Basically, yeah, pure marketing, exactly. And it was heaven. I loved it.
And just to go there, I mean, you were able to do that at a customer acquisition cost that the margin was big enough to make that a profitable business?
Yeah, it's a great story. It's a great question, Jim. We were working with a company called Overture. They had this tiny office in Pasadena. They had invented something called pay-per-click advertising, if you can believe that. And, one of my brothers became friends with someone at that company. We used to hang out with them once a month in their tiny office in Pasadena. That company, Jim, later got bought by Yahoo. Yep. And then Yahoo, on behalf of Overture, sued Google because Google had stolen their technology. And Google, I don't know if they're still paying a licensing fee, but they paid a lot of money to this tiny company owned by Yahoo called Overture for decades.
Wow. Isn't that funny? So they bought the company for cheap, but they won a lawsuit and made it all good. Yeah. That's a crazy story.
Yeah. I mean, the Yahoo story doesn't end well, but that's how we were getting the customer acquisition. It was basically a nickel a click. And, we were making $150, $250 on every sale, especially those bigger items. And so the economics were beautiful.
So this is like the Gary Vee story, right? You were early in the space when it was cheap and you were able to make a business out of it. Those clicks are probably bid up to very significant numbers now for that particular item. And the economics may not be as good as they were when you were doing it then.
Well, they're terrible now. Over a 5-year period, we went from like a nickel a click to $5 a click. Yeah. That's what happens. The bidding process, they made it very easy to be able to get that traffic on the first page of search results. But one bonus that happened the second year of the business, we got a phone call from Amazon because they had just started the third-party marketplace. And they called and said, you guys are everywhere, all over the search engines. And it wasn't just Google back then. It was, Alta Vista and Vista, whatever.
Ask Jeeves.
Yeah, exactly.
Everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. So we were everywhere. And, I don't even think they knew we were paying nickel a click to be there. But they asked us to sell on this brand new marketplace that they had just launched. We were selling hoops on Amazon before even Amazon was.
Wow.
And that was definitely a bonus. But being able to get easy traffic through a bidding process is difficult because everyone floods into the market, bids up the cost per click, and then you have to be very discerning.
Well, and this is the Gary V argument. He goes, go in early before everybody's figured out what the clicks are worth and do the arbitrage. And once they figure out what it's worth, you go to the next platform. So he's
exactly
always go in early, go in hard, and then jump when it gets bid up to market or above market numbers. So
I never made that Gary V connection, but I really appreciate it because I'm a big Gary V fan. So thanks for that, Jim.
I think you're channeling your inner Gary V. It's great.
I love it. Let me get my baseball cap.
There you go. Oh, yeah, right. So how did you go from Super Duper Hoops to the second business, which was more of a broad-based business? And I remember like outdoor ping pong tables and all kinds of sporting goods there.
Well, we started to spin off or launch different websites. So at the time, the Google SEO play and the search engine play was to have very specific verticals in terms of your keyword structure. So we had Super Duper Hoops, that was our basketball category. Then we started Super Duper Scooters, which was our scooters. And it made sense to have a multitude of unique URLs that, for SEO purposes. And then at some point, Google did a dance and they changed that equation. And so it became more appropriate and better for your SEO to pull all of those individual URLs into one. And so, we came up with a bad name that was hard to say and harder to spell, Dazity, because we were geniuses. And at that time we had the game rooms, we had Super Duper game rooms, scooters, baseball, all sorts of others. And we just pulled it under one roof and started. And again, still drop shipping. We were probably still drop shipping 90% of our orders. We had a tiny warehouse in Tarzana, California.
So how did you figure out that Google changed their algorithm? Because they're pretty secret about their algorithm. And, people spend a lifetime and have businesses around, I can help you crack the algorithm. And I don't believe any of them, frankly. So, you said, okay, they changed your algorithm. And so we changed our model. How did you figure that out? And how did you figure out what the better model would look like? Because I think that's something like all of us struggle with. We're doing the Google dance, but we can't see the other partner really. So how did you figure that out?
For me, it was really simple. The Occam's razor, it's the simplest solution. The simplest answer is usually the right one. We went from page 1 of search results to nowhere, overnight. Yeah. We woke up one day and we're like, where's the orders for Super Duper website or for Dazity? And they were just gone. And, then we panicked and we'd had a bunch of friends that we pulled in as consultants to help us with SEO. And they informed us that, what had happened is, Google did a dance. And then we noticed also on that first page of search results, it went from very specific verticals to the bigger, broader company models. And that's really when Amazon was really starting to take over each of those categories. I have a conspiracy theory that Amazon's folks talked to Google around that time because they were all there in Silicon Valley. And they said, hey, why are you giving these nobodies who's nobody's ever heard of this great SEO? You should give it to us because we sell everything. But I don't have any evidence, Jim. That's just my own conspiracy theory.
So you think there was a meeting at the Green Turtle in Milpitas where this deal got cut, huh?
Yes, sir. You got it. Absolutely.
Okay, I hope the SEC is not listening, but it could have happened.
They got bigger issues right now, but yeah.
So it seems like Dazzy was So I do TikTok, right? So when Gary V came to our conference, said, "Hey, you got to get on TikTok." I already was, and one of the things I see on that is, these get rich quick schemes, right? Yeah. And one of them is to become either for sale by Amazon or a drop ship strategy. So you had that in Dazzy. Why did you stop doing it? You've got what everybody is saying is the model that I can get rich and sit on a beach with. So what's the disconnect between what I'm hearing on TikTok and you had this business and you chose not to do it anymore?
Yeah, what you're hearing on TikTok is still good for a very short time frame, right? So here's what happened with us. So we were drop shipping everything. Everything was going great. All of a sudden, Amazon becomes a larger and larger percentage of our business. They still have half of the online market share of goods sold online today, half. Walmart's second place was 7%. So more and more of our sales were going through Amazon. And then one day we woke up kind of like the Google search story. And all of a sudden, all these listings that we were selling on Amazon had, we woke up one day and all the sales were gone for the day. And we're like, where did our sales go? We go to the listing and we see Amazon had taken over our position in our own listing that we had created. And we're selling our exact same product for 30% less than we could buy it at. And so that's when I first learned about this concept called the buy box, where multiple sellers can sell the exact same thing. Well, we bypassed the other competitors being in the buy box, and Amazon just took over the buy box. And like overnight, the dropship model died for us.
Wow. Because they went and sourced it in China. They found your supplier, they sourced it there, you're done.
Bingo. Yeah. Yeah. They actually, they didn't even source it from the supplier in China yet. That came later. They went right to Spalding is an example I like to use all the time. They went to Spalding and they said, Spalding, we're going to buy truckloads of this stuff, bring it into our warehouse, and we're going to manage, so sell to us. And you know, our Spalding rep called us and was just like in tears. We're so sorry, you guys. We were the #1 online seller of Spalding goods in America for like 4 straight years. Wow. They invited us to the NBA All-Star game, put us up in the Ritz every year. You know, rode the elevator with Shaq. You know, it was cool, and that's how much business we were doing. And then like overnight, it died. So Jim, then we went to phase 2, right? We had to adapt. That's what the TikTok folks don't get. They don't know what's coming next. Right? Yeah. And so what we did is we went to Spalding and we said, you like us, we like you. You know, customers are complaining about these products that are good sellers. They'd like to make, you know, change happy to glad. We would like you to make those changes for us. Give us a unique UPC code and a unique SKU. And we want an exclusive sales relationship with you on these. And so we moved from drop ship everything everyone else is selling to an exclusive product model. And what was amazing about that is we did 2 or 3 times the business with the exclusive model because we weren't sharing the buy box anymore with anyone.
Right.
And so in order to do that though, Jim, we had to inventory. So that's when we had to learn about inventory.
Okay.
And that was a painful lesson.
Because they said, if I'm going to do exclusive, you're going to buy the inventory.
Bingo.
How big a change did you need to make for it to go from, you know, standard Amazon's going to compete to just different enough that I end up in a different search category?
It didn't take much. Sometimes we changed the color of the base. Sometimes we changed the crank system. Sometimes, you know, we changed the size of the backboard, just a smidge, like half an inch. It was enough to make the change. That buy box is really, really powerful.
That is fascinating. So so if Amazon comes in and steps into your position, you need to move slightly left or right and you still can maintain.
Exactly.
Interesting. With the downside of inventory. So is that what ultimately blew up the business, is the fact that you had inventory and the cash needs around inventory?
You know, I've never said this publicly, Jim. I'll tell you what blew up the business and forced us into a distressed asset sale. It was, we had investors and our investors were porn kings. This is where the story gets good.
No.
Yeah.
As
I'm
in
not
like
even kidding.
On the web, porn kings or like kings of porn?
No, these guys were part of sort of this oligarchy of pornography businesses online. And we got introduced to them by a friend. They came in, you know, they invested, I think, $1 million. We went from 8 million in revenue to 25 million in revenue in 3 years. But what these guys also did is they were one of the CEO was doing about $100 million a year in business, where he was processing credit cards for the pot business in LA and actually in all the Western states that allowed the sales of pot. So you would order your pot to be delivered to your door. They would swipe the credit card, which is what you can't do with pot. You can't swipe a credit card. It's a federal law that you can't do that. And then you would look at your credit card statement the next month and it would be like tennisracketsrus.com or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And so they had a federal case brought against them. They lost that $100 million business overnight. They had a clause to claw back $1 million of their capital on the lending side. And at the worst possible time of our business, they pulled $1 million out of the business. And then we were like, how are we going to pay our suppliers right now? So, we ended up selling the assets of the company to a private investor in Los Angeles, but it was, they kind of pulled the rug out from under us. But it's a juicy story, isn't it? I mean,
that's a great, you're going to save that for 2 truths and a lie. It's too late now though. But
Exactly.
You know, what's interesting is that whole porn industry used to be in Southern California. They've moved out. Yeah. And what's moved in is grow warehouses. So all those that used to be studios are now growing pot. It's, you know, one industry like that to another, but anyway, interesting. So how did that go down? Because, for those that have never been through, we can't pay our bills. We're distressed. What did that look like? What did it feel like? What actions did you take around it?
Well, first of all, do you see this gray hair? If I zoom in real closely, that wasn't there before that happened.
Is that one called DASD, that gray hair right there?
Yeah. That's that patch right there is the DASD gray section. Yeah. And
I name mine. I name mine for my kids, usually for my kids.
That's the other side. That's for my daughters. Right. Yeah. That process, that's like a whole episode in itself almost, Jim. I'll try to summarize succinctly. The first thing that I'll say is you really find out who your friends are when you go through a distress situation like that.
Interesting.
And you know who my number one friend was during that? Pam Singleton. Pam Singleton. Pam Singleton, our CEO group person. She was there for me at every step. I'm going to tear up a little bit. She was there for me every step of the way. I didn't have $1 to pay her, and she just helped me anyway. Helped me through some really, really dark times, helped me structure, helped me figure out and pull me out of the clouds that were, gray clouds and help me see the positive. And, I'll never, as long as I live, I'll never forget her helping me through that very difficult process.
Pam is great people. I mean, that's why she's one of our partners. And, frankly, that's kind of how we roll as an organization, right? We're thick or thin, we don't bail when it gets hard, right? That's exactly the wrong time to bail. So,
Jim, it's very unusual because I got to tell you, when I went through this process, a lot of folks bailed, and none of my friends and CEOs in the Inc. CEO project group bailed. They were all incredibly, insanely supportive, including you, Jim. And I just owe the world to you guys. So let's start there, right?
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks for the little commercial. We really appreciate it.
my pleasure. It's heartfelt.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And, it's the panic and the anticipatory anxiety about what's coming is almost the most torturous part.
Yeah.
Once you cross over that line of departure and say, okay, I got to make some deals now. I got to talk to folks and tell them either I can't pay them or I'm going to pay them later. And I got to find someone that's going to come in here and buy up these assets that I spent, a good portion of my early adult life building. And, once you have that realization, it's over, it's gone. It's sort of, and you have a great support system, like I did with Pam, and great CEO members like Dale Dabbs, who's now my partner here at Avenue 7 Media. It got a lot easier. You realize once and for all that the business is not part of your personal identity. You separate out sort of on an emotional level, and then you just get shit done. Yeah. And that's exactly what we did. We went through, we found somebody who was really attracted to the assets. They picked them up. We had a lot of difficult conversations. I worked the phones nonstop for about, 4 or 5 straight months, just telling people, letting them yell at me, giving people a haircut on what we owed. And we just got through it. And I think you may have said this, Jim, and certainly Pam has said it to me over and over again. You really don't know how to grow a business until you bury one, right? On some level. And this wasn't an official burying of the business because, someone else has taken it. But yeah, I mean, you really do learn a lot. Your anxiety level comes down a lot because that it's not the end of the world. Like you don't die with the business. Right?
Now, you never did a chapter. You actually did it in a structured way of disposing of the assets, cleaning out what you could, negotiating deals. No legal process occurred here, right?
No, exactly.
Did you end up with anything at the end of it, or it was wiped? There was no wealth left at the end of this thing.
Whatever I ended up with, I gave to suppliers. So
that's okay. So you got wiped out. It's interesting. We had a member for a long time, Wayne, his name was, and Wayne had been through 2 or 3 bankruptcies. And his line, we had a member who was sort of similar to you, asset heavy, struggling to pay the bills. Yeah. And Wayne's line, which they still repeat now, years later, they go, after your first bankruptcy, they get easy. So, no, not to say I ever want you to face this again, but I'm just saying the next time you see this, you'll go, okay, I know what this looks like, right? And you'll have a different attitude, a different approach.
That's right.
You don't want to second guess your life, but if you had a chance to go in the Wayback Machine and say, I would do this, this, and this different, what would those things be around that business? And maybe your answer is it was doomed. There was nothing I could do. But, I'm just wondering if you had any epiphanies like, man, I should have done this.
The one change that I would have made going all the way back to 2003 was I would have picked a different category. It was a really different category. I as you tend to do, you look back, especially going through that process and say, what would I have done differently?
Yeah.
We built a hell of a business and a hell of a brand. And, we learned a ton. It was like an MBA program times 100. Mm-hmm. And so the learnings that we got were incredible and incredibly valuable that now I've translated into the new business. But the one thing that I would have changed, and I say this all the time, if my brothers and I had started selling toothpaste instead of basketball hoops, we'd be $1 billion company.
Really?
Because it's a repeat business model. We were selling basketball hoops and pool tables that no one needed to buy again forever. Right. And there were plenty of accessories and stuff like that we were selling, but that stuff became super low margin and it was very seasonal. Yeah. 40% of our business in November and December, you got to be really good at buying inventory or you're tanked. You're really in trouble. And we had a couple of years where we had some misses. And so we really got good at identifying best-selling products, but I would have gone after I would have started a CPG. I would have started a deodorant company, Jim.
Yeah.
The products and everything were fun, foosball tables, air hockey, ping pong, basketball. But at the end of the day, I would have picked a different product line. That's the only
so you
thing
want
I
to
would
do
have changed.
Harry's razors or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, what a great model. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I remember, what was the original one? Shave Club for Men. Was that the first one that did it?
I think so.
I remember I did an interview with NPR and we talked about recurring revenue business models. Yeah. And I talked about that one because it's a great model. It's subscription. And, broadly, when we deal with, CEOs, this question of business model and recurring revenue, I say, if there's one thing that you probably heard me say it, right? One thing to get right in your business is to get recurring revenue. The more recurring revenue you have in your business model, the easier you sleep at night. And the less you have, the less well you sleep at night. And so you had a 0% recurring revenue model that was asset heavy on top of it, right? Yep. So with the change you had to make. And so those are like two strikes against you because your revenue comes off a little bit, the asset just chews you up. And you are constantly I wrote an article recently about if you've got low recurring revenue, you've got gigantic sales costs. Yeah. If you've got high recurring revenue, you can have modest to low sales costs because you don't have to go find your entire revenue stack every single year. So, and that's what you were faced with. So
100%. And the seasonality of that business just added additional complications. And those were niche categories. The game table business is a niche category. It wasn't a high growth category like gaming is, for example, right? It was an old model. And so I just think I love the products and I love the categories. I don't love them as a business person. I would never probably start that category business again.
Interesting. Yeah. So let's find something that everybody uses every day and sell that instead, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I had a friend, unfortunately, was a smoker, and he said, "What's the perfect business model? It costs a dime. It costs a dime. It sells for $1, and it's addictive," which is cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
He says, that's a perfect business model, right?
Yeah. The killing thing aside, it's a very good business model.
Yeah. Small problem.
You mentioned being able to sleep at night, but
So let's talk about, all right. So you came out of that. You probably had sort of some emotional damage, that you had to process as you went through that. How did you move into the business you're in now, Avenue 7? And maybe let's start with how'd you figure it out, and then tell us what the business is too.
Sure. Well, I had a lot of experience driving direct to consumer e-commerce business.
Yep.
Clearly. And I had a ton of experience having success on Amazon. We were a top 200 Amazon seller. There's 2 million Amazon sellers. So I knew the code. I knew the playbook on how to do that. And, Amazon was on this tear of growth, and I started to get phone calls, and I had helped brands before with issues because I had learned them the hard way and figured out a solution for it. And so it just sort of evolved naturally where I was helping people, and they're like, "Hey, I know you're leaving Dazzy. Can you help me with this?" And I became a consultant.
Oh, interesting. So you got pulled into it by people knowing your expertise. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And I was a terrible consultant, Jim. because
well, it's, by the way, it's another terrible business model. Let's just start with that. But why were you a terrible consultant?
Yeah, it was very hard because to have success on Amazon, you have to do 250 things. You need what's hard for folks to understand is not just another sales channel, it's another business model. And you need as many people to manage, if not more, an Amazon business, just the Amazon channel, than you do to drive your own direct to consumer and sometimes to even run your entire business. And so I would say, hey, client, do blah, 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 blah. And then I'd come back the next month and they hadn't even done one because they kind of had the 1,000-yard stare. And they're like, I don't know where to start. There's so much stuff I have to do. And so ultimately I was like, look, I get it. You're running a business. Let us be your fully outsourced Amazon department. Give it to me. I hired a few of my old folks that had left in the Philippines. I hired some really low cost labor who had really smart, experienced Amazon operators. And with 4 of us, we started the fully managed Amazon service agency. So the agency is a little bit of a misnomer because we literally are running their entire Amazon business, everything from branding, listing, SEO, helping them with inventory management. We don't warehouse, but we help them with inventory management. We help them with driving traffic to those listings, both internally on Amazon and externally, customer service, review management, social media posts within the Amazon, just everything. There's a list as long as your arm, Jim, that we do. And that was just the better model for me because it was the way we were able to show the most growth for our clients.
So 2 thoughts. One is you should change the name from agency because what you are is a business process outsourcer. That's actually what you're doing. You're saying, hey, here's a whole process, whole bunch of things that have to happen, and we're going to take it over for you.
I just wrote it down, Jim. Thank you.
There you go. But just when you're thinking about selling that, it's got a huge level of trust. And so when you're selling somebody to let you be their arm of their business and be them, they've got to have a really high level of trust. So just when you're thinking about bringing on a client, it's all about the trust. Probably you know them or they know you by reputation. That's what's helping. As you get beyond the know you, trust you, you're going to have to do that some other way in your marketing efforts. So we're thinking about, but your business process outsourcer is what you are.
Love it.
And I'll take over your Amazon process because you don't know how to do it. And I'll do it better and cheaper than you'll ever do it. And there's a famous line from Jack Welch. It goes, everybody's back office is someone else's front office. And you go, look, Amazon for you would be a back office. It'd be a thing you do. For me, it's my business. And so I'm going to be better than you are always at this. And that's why you want me to do it for you, right? That's the pitch, I think, or something like that.
That's beautiful. No, we've been struggling with that because I hate the word agency because it implies we're a media buyer. Now we do that, but we do so much more.
No, you're a business process outsourcer. That's what you are. You're a BPO. So we'll be sending you both.
Send me the invoice. We'll take care of that offline.
I need a ping pong table. So you didn't really sit down and go, let me come up with the perfect business model and this element. You just said you got pulled into it and said, well, I guess I'll do this, right?
Yeah. I'm like, gosh, I'm pretty good at this. I know a lot of stuff because for 17 years, I built the top 200 Amazon seller business. And it's really hard to learn this stuff if you don't feel the pain and suffering when you make mistakes on that platform. I have something to offer. And it was incredibly meaningful to me as well, Jim, because I was seeing the face of these brands that we were helping fix problems for, and it felt good. Like, so it was just a natural fit. I slotted right into this business. Pam was right there with me from the start and helped develop a recurring revenue model business with skin in the game, with these clients. And, we've had some amazing success stories,
So let's talk about the recurring. I would say it's super sticky and it's repeat, but I'm not sure or is it contractually obliged as well? So talk to me about the model a little bit.
Yeah, we do 12-month contracts in some cases.
So contractual, that's good.
Yeah, It's contractual. We do a monthly management fee sort of retainer model that is a base. The greater of a base or percentage of revenue upside. And so if you come in and you're already doing $1 million on Amazon, we'll baseline that. Anything we do above that $1 million once we start, then we'll take a percentage of that after it goes beyond that base. So we have to cover our costs. We come in at a base that's reasonable, that covers our costs, but we also have tremendous upside and skin in the game, and we're highly incentivized to grow our clients profitably.
And you don't have to, normally when you do a gain share model like that, you have to worry about the accounting of your partner. But since you've got visibility to all the Amazon revenue, you don't need, exactly what everybody knows the number. It's transparent, right?
Yeah, it's completely transparent for us. We have
great.
access to the account, and we know, so we trust our partners, and we pick good partners.
Well, yeah, but there's an old joke about accounting, right? You're trying to hire an accountant. You say, how do you hire an accountant? You go, well, what's 1 + 1? They say 2. No, that's not your person. If they go, what would you like the number to be? That's your person, right? And so accounting is just a little fungible about what's attributed, what's not. So yes, we trust, but accounting is not as precise a science as everybody would like to imagine it is. So yeah. Given all that, I mean, and I know you've written a book about Amazon. I can see it sitting behind you as I do.
Product placement.
I don't know if I learned this from you or you learned it from me, but what's next for Amazon? If that's a channel that we think about using or are using, where is this behemoth going next?
It's a really good question. They're having some growing pains. They're still massive. Their growth numbers have slowed down, but if you look at that since 2019, they're still growing. They just had some comp problems because when the brick and mortar stores closed, everyone came to Amazon in droves. The political environment for Amazon has changed a lot. Mm-hmm. And, I've had conversations with folks who are driving legislation, often a lot of conversations, and there's legislation in both houses of Congress right now looking to limit Amazon's power. They are not a monopoly, Jim. They're actually 4 monopolies.
Right.
They've had a monopoly in books for quite some time now. They're definitely a monopoly in online e-commerce business. They have arguably a monopoly in AWS cloud computing. If AWS shut down tomorrow, our country would cease.
Absolutely. My son works for them on the government side. So yes, totally.
Yeah. And then the fourth one, which is interesting, it's not really a moneymaker for them, but they own the voice recognition software game now too. So they're massive. They're a runaway train. The only thing that is going to slow down their growth and slow down their power, I think, at this point, is legislation. Now, does anything get done before the midterms? I don't know. But I mean, it's amazing. I went to the UPS store the other day, and I needed to get something notarized for our office in the Philippines. And while I'm sitting there waiting for this person to notarize 3 or 4 documents, 6 different people came in while I was just standing there waiting for my notarized documents. And every one of them had an Amazon box that they were either returning or shipping or delivering. And I was just like, man, I had a moment, Jim, where I was remembering 2003 when I said to the guy who picked up the phone and called me to sell hoops on Amazon, I'm like, you guys are selling basketball hoops? They sell everything. There are billions of products listed on that platform. They're not going anywhere. The convenience is bar none. You can find anything you want to buy that's not a car or gasoline. You can have it delivered to your door next day anywhere.
Yep.
And the consumers, I mean, I don't know if our family could function without it. I got 2 young daughters. My wife works as many hours as I do. Without Amazon, I don't know how we can function. So I think from the consumer perspective, it's not going anywhere. If no legislation is done before the midterms that are coming up, there isn't anything that's going to stop it. And I love Amazon. I hate them. I'm concerned about what that means for our country and future innovation and competition, to be honest with you.
Interesting. Yeah, it's surprising. I thought you would have named a 5th, which is logistics.
Oh, let's talk about
it. They went to UPS and FedEx and said, hey, we want to give you more volume. And they said, no mas, you're already too much of our volume. So they created their own logistics infrastructure, planes, trucks, long haul, everything. Amazon. So they also have a logistics dominance that's growing over time. And I think it's only a matter of time before they let people get onto that platform. We see, in the relative legislation, I live outside of DC, we see the advertising that they're targeting at the legislators about certain bills and so forth, and don't pass this. And so, yeah, it's coming. I do think this administration, and we'll see what happens next, but there is an undercurrent of trust busting coming. And you might see them come after Amazon and say, okay, we're going to break this up into those pieces you described. Yeah. AWS is a business.
Yep.
E-commerce
logistics is a business.
Right.
Yeah. It's amazing. I saw my friends at Truist sent over an analysis for me to review recently. And they were talking about the logistics capabilities. Amazon is adding a buy with Prime button to your own e-commerce website.
Wow.
Truist did some analysis. They think that's going to be a $10 billion business. To your point, exactly, Jim, their logistics is, they've got more trucks, planes, boats, ocean containers than FedEx does by far. And they're not really slowing down. That logistics business is an absolute juggernaut. And, I did a podcast recently on my podcast, Day 2 podcast, where I talked to longtime industry veteran, former Amazon guy, James Thompson. We're talking about Shopify. Yeah. Because Shopify is a platform. They're really a credit card processor, but they're also a SaaS e-commerce system. Yep. And they came out and they were so proud of themselves. They were like, we're going to spend $1 billion Shopify sellers to become a huge logistics juggernaut. First of all, you read a little deeper, that's $1 billion over 2 years. Well, Amazon spent $50 billion during COVID, 50 to build out that logistics network.
Yeah.
There's no one that has the intestinal fortitude or the capital to be able to match that, Jim. It is a fifth. You're right. I'm going to start adding them.
Add the fifth.
Write it down, Jim. I always learn something when we talk.
Well, you can imagine the meeting in Amazon headquarters. Hey, did you hear Shopify is going to spend $1 billion in infrastructure? And they go, that's a solid week. Yeah, sure. All right.
I have to make one comment because I love this notion of like they're going to have to get busted up into multiple companies. I was at P&G when they made Procter & Gamble sell Clorox because they were too dominant in laundry frickin' detergent.
Yep.
And so like I laugh about the presence of Amazon in our lives compared to Tide plus Clorox. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's just almost comical what was going on in the late 80s and early 90s in terms of trust busting that doesn't seem to be moving as quickly in the e-com space. So I just thought it was a really interesting, exaggerated comparison,
It's a great point, Julie. Look, the antitrust busters have been asleep at the wheel.
Sure.
I mean, it's a joke to compare Clorox business to the size of Amazon and Google. Yeah. It's just incredible.
It's changing though. I have a friend who works for Justice, and he said it used to be for Hart-Scott-Rodino, we would assume that the deal would go through unless there was a reason not to do it. He said that's flipped. It's now it doesn't go through unless there's a good reason to do it, and so you'll see more activity on preventing these things. Jason, why don't we end on just sort of if I was a new entrepreneur, I was thinking about starting a business, what would be your 2 or 3 bullet point advice pieces to young Jason or young Jim or young Debbie or whoever? Here's the 3 things you need to be thinking about.
Oh, that's a good one. I have to start with your book, Jim, The Great CEOs Are Lazy. When I read your book, when we first met those many years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, the line in your book that really stuck with me immediately as an entrepreneur that was scaling fast, I think we're right at the beginning of that tripling of the size of the business, was if you can delegate something to someone to do 70% as good as you can, do it. Yeah. I was totally hung up on this idea at that time that no one can do this job or these 15 jobs that I was doing better than I could. Right. And, the flip side of that is what's the highest and best use of your time as an entrepreneur. Right. And so the 2 of those together, Jim, have been incredibly valuable for me as I've built now my second business, or we're we've 4x'd in a year.
Nice.
And an accelerated growth business again. And that is, don't be afraid to delegate. Don't have an unrealistic expectation that whoever you hire is going to be able to do it like you do. Right. They have a very different incentive, and it's okay. Make sure they do their job, but they're not going to be you, and that's okay. And then focus on what the highest and best use of your time is. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're building capabilities and growth. You need to find your ability to be addicted to growth, but don't grow too fast. You got to grow just the right amount. The final piece, I don't know if this is 4 or 5. I think I blew up your 3, but whatever.
It's okay.
The fourth, the next one. And again, Jim, you and Pam taught me this. Find a really good partner who, and not necessarily a partner or an employee who can understand and help you be financially disciplined. Now, you may think that being addicted to growth and financial discipline are mutually exclusive, but they're not. To be able to grow a high growth business, you have to be able to have both. And if you don't like getting into the weeds and details and looking at the commas and the periods and the accounting, hire someone who lives and breathes that shit and let them be your financial discipline czar in your business to help rein you in as you want to grow beyond your capabilities. I'd leave it at that. And I got to give you credit where credit is due, Jim. Without Inc. CEO Project, 2 or 3 of those things wouldn't be in my mix. I'd probably be out of business.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I was not fishing for compliments, but thank you.
That's okay. Much. Again, heartfelt.
Well, Jason, this was great. Entertaining and fun and educational. And as usual, super engaging. I really appreciate your time and your effort on this, and wish you good luck. And I'm glad we're on the journey with you.
Yeah, me too, Jim. I couldn't have done it without you and Pam and Dale Dabbs, our president at Avenue 7 Media. Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure. I always learn something. I got 3 things I wrote down on my notepad here from you, Jim. Thanks, awesome. And keep up the great work over there.
All right, Jason. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time on Great CEO Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Lazy CEO Podcast. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes, and check out our website, www.theceoproject.com.